7 money truths I wish I knew sooner. Like most of you, I grew up knowing nothing about the money except that I can use it to buy what I want. The only problem was is that I didn't know how to make that money. We grew up struggling financially, so my parents always had this idea that I should do my best to get a high paying job in the respectable company to lift myself out of the desperate financial positions. In fact, I didn't even know what the stocks market was until I was like 17 years old. And it took me some time to figure out how to on the earth does it works, and I learned it into the hard way where I lost money. But eventually I figured everything out. But there is a certain things that I wish I just knew earlier. I wish something would have told me that when I was a little teenager. I would have done a lot of the things differently and saved all of the money and time I have to wasted on to figure them out. So what I am going to do in this video is to share them with you, save you a ton of the money and most importantly time. Knowing these things will help you to get financially free sooner than you would otherwise. First, leverage truths, goods, details into great deals. If someone told me back when I was 19 that you could use debts to make their fortune, I would say you're an idiot. I would never ever go into the debt because I grew up having such negative options about debt. Leave alone the interests you get charged on the top of it. But it turns out that the debt isn't as bad as it's imagined. It's actually good in some cases. Take this case, for example. Let's say you want to buy the house and you have $1 million in cash. If you have really strong credit scores, you can get a 3% mortgage rate. Of course, you can spend that $1 million to buy a house, or you get a mortgage and invest that $1 million elsewhere, like the stocks market, for example. You get wet by 7% annually. In the second scenario, where you are using debt, you are using getting the house, but letting that money grow by the additional 4%. This is, of course, a super simple example because we didn't take into account the down payments and the market fluctuations, but what's the idea in general? Every successful real estate investor has used debt in some forms to be where they are. Often they are use their first mortgage as the collateral to get the second one and rent it out and so on. Instead of the saving to buy each property, you can use debts to save yourself decades worth of time. Second, tax loopholes are made to be used. No one likes paying, but the tax code isn't black and white except the income tax where it gets higher as you make more money to 37%, but it's filled with loopholes where you could be making millions of the dollars and pay absolutely no taxes because on paper you could be showing loss. Let's say you have $3,000 mortgage with your mortgage rate of 3%. You can deduct your mortgage interest from your rental income, which means if you make the $30,000 from that house, you can be deducting $9,000 from it, 3% of the $300,000. Now, instead of the paying taxes on the $30,000 out of the sudden, you only have to pay the $21K. That's why it's even better to get the mortgage even if you can afford to buy the property. There is also something called depreciations. Almost everything we buy depreciates over the time. Tax codes usually allow you to use depreciation as the expenses, although you lost nothing and further lower your income on paper and minimize taxes. Companies use this strategy all the time. If you just pick the financial statements of any company, you will realize that they always have depressions in their income statements. You can even avoid taxes when you sell the property if you ended up buying another one in return. We can talk forever about the loopholes in the tax code, but that's the idea in the general. The next one is the more money you make, the easier it gets. When you barely make ends meet, it's difficult to imagine making millions, even hundreds of the thousands. If you work overtime, you might somehow to double your income, but the truth is wealth doesn't work like the earning your first $1,000 is much more harder than the making your first $1,000,000, because as you make the more money, more opportunities will open in front of you. Saving is to be able to get your first mortgage might take you a few years at least, but the second one gets a lot easier. So don't be discouraged if you can't see yourself making more. Focus on saving your first 20 to 50 or $100,000 or getting your first property. Trust me, it gets way easier down the road. Planning the first three is the most difficult one. First, the single opportunity can make you the fortune. The average return on the investments is in market is about 6 to 10%, and the only way to build a fortune in investing long term. But there is another way, a faster way. There is literally a shortcut in the building wealth, and it exists, but it's not easy. In 2008, when the market crashed, home prices fell dramatically. They were sold at the fractions on their value, and whoever was ready for that opportunity jumped in and purchased multiple properties for the fraction of their real price. A few years later, made the fortune when the home prices rose back to their value during crisis crash is the king and the pandemic is roof. In March, stocks prices dropped by almost 50%, and whoever was ready to ended up making a fortune. So, if you want to really for the next crises, you have to saved and saved. Don't explain your financial goals to anyone. One of the mistakes I made back when I was a little teenager is telling people my financial goals. People start arguing with you, telling you why is that not possible, why is that not a realistic goal, and so on. That can discourage some people. The truth, you know yourself and your situations much better than others. Keep your goals, especially financial goals, within yourself. Of course, be rational with them, but the truth is that no one really cares. People sometimes feel jealous, sometimes they want to discourage you, so just keep your working on silence and let your result talk. Always use 80 to 20 rule. There are the millions ways to make more money, and that's not over exaggerations. Some of them are going to work for you and other ones. What you have to do is to find that one thing that makes you maximum income, and then focus your energy on making the best out of it. Don't jump for the one thing to another. Don't try to do a lot of things at the same, which is what I did back when I see a lot of the people repeat the same mistakes. Have ever heard that 80 to 20 rule, where 80% of the outcome comes from the 20% of the causes? It applies to money as well. 80% of your income comes from the 20% of your work. So focus only on them. And finally, there are the things that money can't buy. When you are living paycheck to paycheck, you imagine that the money can buy anything. That's not true. Anyone who makes a lot of the money can tell you. Money, of course, solves a lot of the problems and make life a lot better. And you should strive to make a lot of the money. But there are the things that money can buy, like the friendships, just good times with friends, a dinner with the family. While you are building your wealth, enjoy these little things along the way. Build great relationships, have fun. Money isn't gonna help you with that. And now it's your turn. What do you think? One thing about money you think everything should know. Um, what is the most important things you have ever learned about money? Let me know in the comments below. And now it's time for you to give this video the thumbs up it deserves. And if you want to learn more about money, then subscribe to turn on your notifications. What are you waiting for? Thanks for watching, and until next time.